Breasted regarded him as such. He inaugurated a revolution in art. And this is from a museum in walking distance of the British Museum in London. And this museum is called the Petrie Museum. Let me show you another one next. Now look at the soldiers here. This is during the middle of Dynasty 18. The art is very different. And let me show you two other images of that artistic trend. Next. Here. Next. And this one. This is during the what Egyptologists traditionally call the Amarna period. This is the age of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Next. Now this is also in the Louvre in Paris. Now you know that's the sister. I didn't show this one in the school. Next. Next. This is a figure named Ramses III. Not Ramses the Great, Ramses III, who was great himself. He is on the throne for 31 years during Dynasty 20. We don't study Dynasty 20 very much. And this is the lid of his sarcophagus or coffin. He is important to us because he repulsed two invasions of Egypt by peoples called the peoples of the sea. Now this is the lid of the coffin. Let me show you what's inside his tomb. These figures right here. This is in Egypt. This is one of the few images from actually still in Egypt. And this is in the Valley of the Kings in Luxor. Next. This takes us to the tail end of the dynasties. This is an African woman named Amanirdis. She is governor of the largest, most powerful city in the world called Waset. The Greeks called it Thebes, and this is a part of modern-day Luxor. It's from the term Luxor that we derive the modern term luxury. And perhaps one of the most important things I try to instill this week, and I do all the time, is the importance and stature of African women and how they were highly respected. You could not dare disrespect the black woman in antiquity. Next. This is her nephew, and I took this photograph myself. This is in the British Museum in London, and this is the man named Taharqa, who led at least 2, maybe 3 armies to Jerusalem to save his Jewish allies. When he was a prince, he led an army all the way from the Nile Valley to Spain. That's in ancient Spanish documents. As a king, when he was coronated, he sent for his mother way down in inner Africa to come and see him coronated king of Upper and Lower Egypt. I'm very touched by the sentiment there. And Dr. John Henry Clark, one of our greatest scholars, one of our greatest ancestors, said that this man took us on our last great walk in the sun. Next. This is from Kush, or Nubia. This was on display in the British Museum in London in October, and you see a queen mother called a Kentake, K-E-N-T-A-K-E, with an African goddess. I was in one of the schools, and there was a brother from the Sudan, and he kind of looked at me funny as if to say, how come you didn't talk about Nubia? How come you didn't talk about Kush? I don't know if he was here today, but I mentioned I would show at least 1 or 2 slides from there. Next. This one is also in the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge, and this is a Nubian wrestling with being attacked by a crocodile. And apparently the brother is not letting him sweat it, not letting the croc sweat him too much. It doesn't seem to be a big deal. I made a real special effort to photograph this one too. I waited until nobody was looking, and then I photographed it 3 or 4 times. I'm prepared to go to great lengths to get these photographs, offering bribes, whatever it takes, so I can come to Philly and share these. Next. These are the gods and goddesses, some of them, of ancient Africa. This, for example, is a real buff version of the god named Amen, and it's from the name Amen that, of course, in the Judeo-Christian tradition, we derive the expression Amen. Next. This is the god known as Ptah, and he is the patron of craftsmen. He is the patron of artists. And there's a whole trinity that focuses on him and his wife, Sekhmet, painted black. Next. This is Het Heru, or the house of Heru, the queen of heaven, the golden one. She's identified with the sycamore tree. Apparently she comes from inner Africa, and she is one of Africa's most ancient goddesses, and you see her associated also with the cow, and she has these cow horns. She is a mother goddess, a nurturing goddess. And the Greeks are later to take their goddess Aphrodite and develop a relationship between Aphrodite and Het Heru. And the Romans take Het Heru and identify her with their goddess called Venus. But her character changes with the culture. Next. This is the eye of Heru. Not Baba Heru's eye, but this is a beautiful faience piece. Next. And then you have this one. Now this isn't new. I show this all the time. You can put this in my coffin with me, because I'm going to be showing it on my way to wherever I'm going when this life is over. Put a slide projector and a screen in there, and I'll be all right. This one is one of the most important ones, and a lot of the students have a hard time with this. Now, we're not supposed to be talking about religion in the classroom, and so I say that this is a historical document. I photographed this one in Egypt, in the Coptic Museum, not far from the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. I wasn't supposed to have a camera again. I had one. I waited until I didn't see anybody. I pulled out the camera, I focused, I was about to click. I felt a firm tap on my shoulder and a voice in my ear saying, "Sir, no photography allowed." It was a museum official. I gave him $1. He said, "Okay." I gave him another $1. He says, "Why don't you use a flash? You get a better picture." This is called Christ in, that's a true story. This is a little elaboration. This is called Christ in glory. It's an image of Jesus emerging from his tomb after the crucifixion. If you look closely, you can see blood on his hands where he was supposedly nailed to the cross. I don't care if you believe in historicity or not. My point is, our perception of the color of God is fundamental. That's right. And that is what I am trying to indoctrinate people with. Our perception of the color of God is fundamental. If white people want to worship him or her, as a European, as a Caucasian with blonde hair and blue eyes, I don't have a problem with that. But don't expect me to follow lockstep with that. I want to believe that when we look in the mirror, we are seeing a reflection of God in ourselves. People will tell you, and I heard it all week, but I wasn't taking any prisoners. I heard it all week. But Dr. Rashidi, the color of God doesn't matter. My response was consistent. Why is he white all the time then? If it don't matter, it does matter. Let me show you another very powerful image, and the children had a few problems with this too. I would start off by asking them, for the most part, what do you think of when you think of Africa? And some answers would be very constant, consistent. There would be wild animals, people with diseases, especially AIDS and HIV, starving people, poverty, and slavery. And so I said, really? And so I would attempt to break down each one of those myths, each one of those perceptions. Now, this is a photograph that I saw in another art gallery in Scotland, in Edinburgh, in October. And then, unfortunately, again, they wouldn't let me take a picture, and they were serious this time. And there was no postcard, and it wasn't in a book. So all I could do was look at it and write some notes down. And then, lo and behold, the next country I went to, Turkey, I found an expensive book, and it had this picture in there. So I reproduced the book for I reproduced the photograph for your perusal. What you have is a painting about 300 years old, and it supposedly is a slave market in Cairo. We're still in Egypt. But you have a little difference here. The slaves are white women. The auctioneer is a black man in a turban, and the person who's purchasing the slaves are white people. And so my point was, slavery is not confined to Africans. And when you think of slavery, you should not think of black people. And they had a bit of a difficult time with that one, but you could see some of the children clap their hands with glee. Next. Now, these are 2 or 3 images from outside of the Nile Valley. This image